Hello everyone, my name is Steven and welcome to Storytime. Today we're going to be reading some malicious compliance stories, tales where following the rules can lead to some just desserts. And let me just say, if you're not already subscribed to Storytime, please consider doing so. But with that being said, let's sit back, relax, and listen to some captivating Reddit stories. Employees can't take quality breaks? Okay, you got it. This had been an ongoing issue with my job for months. I'm military, but I work in an office primarily with civilians and contractors. We're basically military in name only, but there's a few upper leaders who take it very seriously. We work a Panama schedule, 12-hour shifts. Every other week I work 70 hours, which includes every day of a normal weekend. We're severely undermanned, with most of us working 2 positions at once to make up for the gaps. There's never enough people to get all the work done, but we do pretty well and we always knock out the top priorities. I'm a shift supervisor, so my coworkers fall under my purview of responsibility. They're linguists, processing hundreds of audio cuts a day, as do I. I don't know anyone who can sit for 12 hours, headphones on, listening to crappy foreign languages, who can do so for the full shift with no breaks, and still be a good operator giving quality work. I always, especially on weekends when most offices don't have employees in, let my operators take a break to read or watch a couple YouTube videos or go chat to someone. As long as the work gets done, I don't give a freak. But for the sake of decorum, I limit these breaks to about 15 minutes an hour. Pretty reasonable, right? Apparently not. There's an E7 in charge of my shop as well as 2 others at any given time. Basically, we just report stats to them and they keep us apprised of goings-on in our mission sets. I had just finished processing about 100 files and I'd been in for about 2.5 hours without stopping. I ambled on over to YouTube and watched a couple short videos to give myself a break, and over comes the E7 to chastise me for it. They have a particular distaste for YouTube, but basically, having your headphones on for any reason except work-related audio is treated as non-compliance. So I went back and did another 100 cuts and then read a little from a novel I brought. Same E7, same issue. At this point, I'm tired and more annoyed than usual. I can't read, I can't listen to audio that isn't someone screaming in a different language, and I can't go anywhere since we're so undermanned. I started setting an alarm for quarter till every hour, and for those 15 minutes I would sit and stare at the wall. I wouldn't speak to anyone, I wouldn't watch or read anything, just sat still and idly in my chair. Whoever entered my field of vision received that stare, which of course included the E7, as he is constantly coming into our spaces to make sure we're not smiling, laughing, or breathing. It didn't take long for him to ask me what I was doing, and I told him honestly I was taking a break before diving back into my work. He was generally uncomfortable with the 1,000-yard stare at first, but gradually it turned into irritation, building slowly until he reached the conclusion that I must just be doing this to be disrespectful and petty, which isn't untrue. And he decided to take it to my direct chain of command to report my insubordination. My own E7 calls me in, already ticked off because the previous E7 equated my silent breaks as something akin to a war crime, and they all sort of stick together and believe each other until proven otherwise. I very calmly explained the situation, emphasizing the unreasonable expectation of our work being at its best when we can't step away to breathe for a second in some capacity, and certainly I did not intend to make this E7 feel as though I was intentionally disrespecting him. I was simply following the orders of what I and my operators are not allowed to do on breaks. My E7 was mostly on the side of this other E7, so he took it to my E8 in junior officer leadership. The same conversation was repeated, and after providing statistics on the amount of work completed with and without quality breaks allowed, which I had been collecting since the first incident in case it came to a head, always have a paper trail, y'all, I essentially proved myself right. Upper leadership hates when that happens, but in the face of factual, tangible evidence that both employees and the quality of work suffer when you don't allow brief respites, we developed a timed, organized break system. 15 minutes max every hour to do one non-work related activity. Suck it, E7. I would think that line of work and what they expect you to do hour-wise kind of equates to like some kind of torture. So I understand wanting to have a little break once in a while. Good on OP for keeping a backup of the statistics and proving what needs to be done to keep employees happy and work flowing. I need to be nicer to the interns? Okay, enjoy your fight with the FDA. This is my dad's story, not mine, so I won't be including any dialogue. I'm also going to have to be a bit vague in places to protect said job. Info tidbit for those somehow unfamiliar, the FDA is the American regulatory body that approves medical stuff for sale on the market, along with being the oversight body of the entire food industry in the US. It's a big, clunky, slightly outdated, and often frustrating agency, but it's there for an incredibly good reason: to keep corporations from maiming or killing anyone. My dad had been an engineer, and a danged good one, with his company for 29 years. He holds over 60 patents for them, with another couple hundred patents in various stages of processing. He holds a job title only held by less than 1% of the engineers at his firm. Like I said, he's a dang good engineer. My dad's company uses a lot of interns from all over the country, and sometimes the world, all of whom are desperate to learn at such a well-respected firm. They are paid generously, up to $25 an hour, and aren't overworked. They almost never do overtime. But over the last 10 years or so, many schools have tweaked their engineering degree programs and are now leaving out emphasis on several things that are vital to success at said firm. As a result, my dad can be a bit tough on his interns. To clarify, he's never mean, doesn't raise his voice, doesn't cuss, etc., but he will make them redo lab tests and reports until they're done correctly. This is vital, as everything the company makes must be approved by the FDA before it can go to market, and that process can be horrendous. A few years ago, my dad got assigned a quite lazy intern, and things were tense for the 5 months he was there. When the intern left, he told them my dad was much too firm with him and needs to learn to relax. They decided to use this as an excuse to not pay my dad his entire, rather robust, bonus that year, until someone in the meeting stood up in support of my dad. This guy was a low-level manager, still on the young side, who was there to learn about the review process. He had also interned under my dad years earlier. This young manager told them the only reason he is where he is today is because my dad was tough on him. He learned how to do things right and do it right the first time. He told the reviewers they were nuts and it'd be better if more intern supervisors were hard on the interns. My dad got his bonus that year, but the next year they pulled out the same bull and cut his bonus in half. No one stopped it that time. So my dad said freak it, he'll do exactly what they want. Best of all, the intern he'd just been assigned was on the lazy side. Several months later, my dad was called into a meeting. They told him a project had been denied FDA clearance, costing them over $500,000 because of sloppy work from my dad's intern. My dad wasn't actually in this failed project. His intern had been loaned to another team for it, but my dad was still this kid's supervisor and the one double-checking the reports. My dad coldly informed them that he was only doing what they asked him to do. He was being nicer to the intern, allowing them to turn in lab reports they generated instead of making the kid rewrite it over until it was correct. Needless to say, my dad got his bonus this year and there were no more mentions of interns and lab reports. There's a difference between being mean and being strict. When you're strict, you have a very specific way of teaching and they have to do it right, or else there's going to be big problems, as evidenced by the $500,000 here. Obviously, OP's dad is in the right here, and the management was just trying to appeal to someone who probably got their feelings hurt just a little too much, despite the fact that that's how it needs to be to make sure you get the job right. A story of some furniture, some large files, and a box of condoms. Never thought I'd use these words in a single sentence. This is a story of my father. It was told to me by my grandmother on my father's 10th death anniversary back when I was 18. And a lot of the details I later discovered from my father's journal, which I found while cleaning one of his old wooden boxes. The story takes place in 1984 to 1986, about 10 years before I was born. My father, who I'll refer to as Dad from here on, started work as a logistics manager and accountant at a government INGO partner organization. Let's call it Org X, which worked for raising awareness about family planning in the rural areas of my country. It was a non-profit organization. Dad's office had a rickety metallic chair, a 3-legged desk supported by a stack of bricks for the 4th leg, and a steel cupboard with a padlock. Terrible working conditions, I know. Dad would process the incoming and outgoing materials, which included birth control pills, condoms, posters about family planning, and other such stuff which were utilized by Org X for social awareness programs and such, and kept accounts for all transactions. After having worked for a few months, Dad decided the working environment needed an overhaul even though only 3 people worked there. Dad, a security guard, and an intern who assisted Dad. There was a cleaning lady, but she wasn't a full-time worker and only worked 2 hours every day. Nobody can keep working in such a terrible work environment. Dad started sending letters every week or two to the government agency which funded the office of Org X where my dad worked and handled his paychecks, requesting for funds for furniture and other items for better organization of files and such. He would get a reply of insufficient funds. He kept it up though. For the 3 years he worked there, he kept each letter and its reply on a separate file, and when it got too full, he got another one. He had 3 giant files filled with just these letters. In hopes of one day getting a positive reply, he had already bought the necessary items out of his own paycheck because no one could work in an office as ill-supplied as that. Items he bought included a couple of sofas for guests or visitors, 2 benches, a few chairs, a nice desk, a chalkboard, etc. One day, about a couple months after his 3rd year, the organization decided to close the office where my dad worked, which meant he and the other people worked there had to leave. A supervisor came to his office telling him to clear out of the office of his personal belongings as the INGO had stopped funding the project. Here's the malicious compliance. All the furniture, including the chalkboard, an AM radio, and a small water kettle, were brought home by my father, leaving the office empty. The supervisor, upon finding the office literally empty, threatened to sue my dad for theft of government property. He politely showed the officials who came to investigate the receipts of the furniture and other stuff, which he paid for from his own wallet, plus the 3 giant files. In compensation for troubling Dad for stupid reasons, the now defunct office of Org X was instructed to pay a certain amount which they couldn't allocate much money for, so they instead sent him a year's supply of condoms. Quite an absurd way to pay someone off, but meh, it makes for a good story, along with the fund they could allocate. My dad got married the year he left the office, so yeah, he most likely made good use of the box. He then taught mathematics in a high school to secondary and intermediate level students during the day for the remainder of his life, while he ran an evening mathematics tutoring class at our house, where the table, the bench, and the blackboard were put to good use. My grandma passed away 4.5 years ago, and this was her favorite story of her eldest son. My dad had an elder sister and a younger brother, and I'm writing this story a month before my father's 17th death anniversary. I respect my dad a lot. Even though he passed away when I was just 10, he loved us very much and left us in very good financial condition. The school where he taught offered me and my sister almost free education up to higher secondary level. We only had to pay exam fees. It's a long post, but it's my first post, and to understand this story, most of the details had to be well explained. Rest in peace, Dad. Hope I do you proud one day. Well, first off, I'm incredibly sorry to hear how young OP was when he lost his father, and of course, rest in peace to his father. But it is a pretty fun story to hear back on. The fact that he got paid a little bit for his troubles in a year's supply worth of condoms is a pretty funny story, and definitely one that you should remember. So thank you to OP for sharing this story with us. A wee little bit. Obligatory, this happened a while ago, but the girlfriend likes to remind me of this quite often, so I thought I'd share. First off, I love my girlfriend, so please don't construe anything I'm about to share as hate or rant. This happened a year or so ago, and she has improved drastically since then. For backstory, know that my girlfriend is lazy as heck. She would often spend more time avoiding doing a thing than it would actually take to complete the task. We all know the type. So on to the story, short and sweet. We were laying in bed one evening with the TV going in the background, each on our phones just scrolling away. All of a sudden, my peaceful relaxation is interrupted by a seemingly simple request. Can you make me a bowl of cereal? Hold up. We're both adults. We're both of equal distance to the kitchen. We're both trying to relax. And no, neither of us are handicapped, crippled, sick, or otherwise in any way prevented from performing basic functions of life. She was just lazy, so I said no. And I kept saying no, over and over and over again. Just a wee little bit, she would beg. Please. Knowing my happiness was at stake and an argument was on the horizon, I got up, walked the 30 feet to the kitchen, small house, and made her a bowl of cereal in a shot glass. A wee little bit is all you want, a wee little bit is all you're going to get. I put her Fruity Pebbles in the shot glass, topped it off with milk, put the glass on a saucer with a tea stir spoon on the side, and served her with her request. Just a wee little bit. She got exactly what she was asking for. I think that's just a funny little moment between two caring people. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today, so thank you so much for listening to and watching the Storytime channel. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and let us know what you thought about these stories in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.